Chapter 1. The grave and the gaze. The rain had just stopped, but the sky still looked like it hadn't made up its mind. Thick, low-hanging clouds pressed over the cemetery, turning the early afternoon into a dull gray hush. I stepped carefully between rows of old headstones, the soles of my flats sinking slightly into the wet grass. Every step felt heavier than the last. I hadn't seen my sister in nearly 2 years, not since the night I walked out of our childhood home with nothing but my car keys and the ache in my chest. But today wasn't about her. Today was supposed to be about Mom. The service was already over by the time I arrived. I had flown in late, and no one had bothered to wait. The funeral tent had already been packed away. Only a few folding chairs remained scattered around the fresh grave, damp and empty. There were lilies beside the headstone. Mom hated lilies. She always said they smelled like endings. Roses, she had told me once, were the only flowers that felt like memory. I was still holding the bouquet of white roses I'd picked up on the way. As I approached the grave, I saw her, Kara, standing with our Aunt Linda and a few of Mom's old church friends. She turned when she heard my steps, her eyes scanning me like a stranger in a room full of secrets. "You're late," she said. I nodded, not rising to the bait. "I came as soon as I could." She looked at the flowers in my hand and then at me like she was seeing something indecent. She crossed her arms, chin lifted. "You don't belong here," she said. The words hit harder than I expected. Not because they surprised me, but because, in some cruel way, I had always known she'd say them. I knelt by the grave, ignoring her. I placed the roses gently by the headstone and whispered, "Hi, Mom. I'm sorry I wasn't here sooner." Behind me, I could hear Kara's impatient sigh. "You can say your piece somewhere else. This is for family." I stood slowly and turned to face her. "I am family," I said, calmly. "Last time I checked, Mom didn't disown me." Kara laughed once, dry and bitter. "She didn't have to. You did that all on your own when you moved out and never looked back." I clenched my jaw. "You know why I left." "No," she snapped. "You made sure none of us did. You just disappeared. And now you think you can show up and pretend like you cared." The pain behind her voice was real, but so was the venom. And it wasn't new. She had always been the golden child. The responsible one. The one who stayed close while I dared to ask questions, break traditions, speak truths that made people uncomfortable. But grief had a way of exaggerating old wounds. And this one? It was festering between us. "Mom called me 3 days before she passed," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "She wanted to see me. I was trying to get here in time." Kara's eyes narrowed, but before she could answer, a man cleared his throat behind us. We both turned. A tall man in a black coat and glasses stood holding a leather folder. He looked between us. "Excuse me. Claire? Claire Montgomery." "Yes," I said, confused. "My name is Daniel Roth. I'm your mother's attorney. She instructed me to meet you here, privately, after the burial." Kara blinked. "What?" "No, wait. We already handled the estate." Daniel gave her a polite but firm nod. "There's an addendum to the will that was not part of the original reading. Your mother left specific instructions that it be given to Claire, and only Claire." Kara looked stunned. "That's ridiculous. Why would Mom?" But he was already holding out the folder to me. "Claire, if you have a moment, we can speak in my car." I took the folder, my hands trembling slightly, and looked back at Kara. She looked pale now. Her anger had turned into confusion. Then fear. I didn't say another word. I followed the lawyer toward the parked car at the edge of the cemetery, my heart racing. Whatever was in that folder, Mom had saved it for me, not them. Me, and that meant everything was about to change. Chapter 2. The addendum. The leather folder sat heavy in my lap as the car door shut behind me. The inside of Daniel Roth's car smelled faintly of coffee and cold leather, and everything felt too quiet, like the world outside had been muted. He turned to me, kind but reserved. "I understand this must feel sudden," he said, adjusting his glasses. "Your mother was meticulous. She left very specific instructions for this." My fingers grazed the edge of the folder. "She didn't tell me anything." "She didn't tell anyone," he replied. "This wasn't part of the original probate process. She wrote it, signed it, and deposited it with me 2 months before she passed." He paused, then added, "She said you would understand why." I opened the folder slowly, expecting some short note, maybe a few sentimental lines. Instead, there were two documents, a handwritten letter from my mother and a revised will, stamped and notarized. The letter was on her old stationery, the same kind she used to write to me when I first left home. Her cursive was still perfect. My Claire, if you're reading this, then Kara has already made you feel like you were never mine. I know how she is. I know how this family has been. But please believe me when I say this, I never stopped loving you. I never stopped seeing you. You left because you needed to breathe, and I didn't stop you because I knew you were right. I didn't know how to protect you from the weight we placed on you. But I've watched. I've listened. And this is me finally doing right by you. I've changed my will. I know they'll hate it. I know Kara will say it's unfair. But I am no longer writing for fairness. I'm writing for truth. There is land. There are funds. There are pieces of me I am leaving only to you. Because you didn't ask for them. Because you didn't expect them. And because you will use them to build, not to hoard. Let them be angry. Let them call you undeserving. But remember, silence is how they kept you small. Speak louder now. I love you. Always have. Always will. Mommy hands trembled as I lowered the page. The revised will detailed a trust in my name, property that had belonged to my grandmother, a significant portion of a savings account, and the full rights to all my mother's personal writings and journals. Kara and Aunt Linda weren't mentioned once. I blinked hard, fighting the sting behind my eyes. I don't understand. Why didn't she tell me? I asked. Daniel spoke gently. She was afraid. Not of you, but of what your presence would reignite. Your sister has long held power over the family's image. Your mother told me that she wanted you to walk into your inheritance clean, unmanipulated. So she waited until after she was gone. I whispered. He nodded. I looked out the window toward the cemetery gates. Kara was still standing there, now speaking with Aunt Linda, gesturing wildly, probably guessing what had just happened. She's going to lose it, I said softly. Daniel sighed. She already has. Back at the hotel, I sat on the edge of the bed with the documents spread out before me. My mind kept replaying Kara's words, "You don't belong here." But clearly Mom had thought otherwise, and now I had proof. Still, that didn't erase the ache in my chest. This wasn't about money. Or even land. It was about being chosen after years of being invisible. Of being the difficult daughter. The runaway. The truth teller nobody wanted to hear. There had been a time I would have burned all of this down just to be loved the same way Kara was. Now, I realized. I didn't need to be loved like her. I just needed to be acknowledged. Mom had done that. Not with words while she was alive, but with action after she was gone. I picked up the handwritten letter and held it to my chest. For the first time in years, I cried, not out of pain, but out of release. She had seen me. She had always seen me, and now the question wasn't, do I belong? The question was, what do I do with the space I've just inherited? Chapter 3. The family meeting the next morning. I woke to 3 missed calls and 2 texts from Kara. We need to talk. You can't be serious. And then, finally, if you don't show up to Aunt Linda's tonight, I'll assume you're running away. Again, part of me wanted to ignore it. I could have. I had the legal documents, the letter, everything I needed to move on financially, emotionally, legally. But something in me, maybe it was pride, or maybe it was that tiny voice of my mother's, whispered, "Go." This time, don't back down. Aunt Linda's house was exactly how I remembered it. Stuck in time. Same floral wallpaper, same plastic-covered furniture, same coldness under the warmth of fake hospitality. Kara was already there when I arrived, arms crossed, lips pursed. Aunt Linda hovered by the dining table with 2 cups of coffee, only 2. Subtle, but not surprising. "I'm glad you came," Kara said, though her tone said otherwise. "I'm not here to fight," I replied. "I just want to be clear about what Mom left behind, and why." Kara raised her eyebrows. "Oh, you think you understand why she changed everything?" Aunt Linda jumped in. "Your mother was sick, Claire. She wasn't thinking straight. She probably wrote that letter in a moment of confusion." I held up the notarized will and trust documents. This wasn't confusion. It was deliberate. She signed it with her lawyer. She set up a trust. She left me a message. Kara scoffed. "A message? Claire, she barely talked about you in the last year. She was heartbroken that you left. I left, I said, because no one here listened when I said I couldn't stay and keep pretending everything was fine. I reached into my bag and pulled out the letter, unfolding it carefully. She knew what she was doing. I continued. She gave me this letter because she didn't trust anyone else to deliver it. She knew that the version of her you all held onto, quiet, agreeable, controlled, wasn't the whole picture. Kara's eyes darted to the page in my hand, but she wouldn't look directly at it. She loved you, Claire, Aunt Linda said. But she never said anything about giving you everything. She didn't give me everything, I said. She gave me what she thought I'd need. The land. Her writings. A piece of her legacy. Not because I'm better. Because I needed it to rebuild. There was a pause. For a moment, the room felt still, like we were standing on the edge of something bigger than just property and resentment. Then Kara snapped. You manipulated her. That's what happened. You called her up after all that time away, made her feel guilty, and she changed her mind in some emotional fog. My voice was calm now, more out of exhaustion than control. I didn't ask her for anything. I didn't even know she'd changed the will until the lawyer handed it to me at the grave, Kara. Her face flushed. That's convenient. What's convenient, I said slowly, is how you and Aunt Linda made all the arrangements behind my back. Didn't even call me after the hospital admitted her. I found out through the nurse. I had to fly across the country just to say goodbye. I was protecting her, she snapped. You didn't deserve to be there after disappearing. She was my mother too. I yelled, finally, the dam breaking, and then I took a breath and added, quieter, you don't get to decide who deserves to grieve. Silence. Then Aunt Linda sighed and sat down. So what happens now? I'm not contesting anything, I said. The documents are final. The trust is real. But I want you to know this isn't about revenge. I didn't ask for any of it, but now that it's mine, I intend to honor her the way I knew her. Not just the mother who stayed, but the woman who broke cycles with her last breath. Kara didn't speak. Instead, she stood slowly, walked over to the letter still on the table, and read the first few lines. Her hand trembled slightly. Her face changed. I didn't know she was writing to you, she said. I know. She always looked at me to hold things together. Maybe she looked at you to let things go. For a second, I saw the girl I used to play with in the backyard. The one who used to cover for me when I missed curfew. The one who used to braid my hair and whisper stories in the dark. Then, just as quickly, the walls returned. She should have told me, Kara muttered, and walked out of the room. I stayed with Aunt Linda a few minutes longer, sipping the coffee that had grown cold. She didn't say much. But just before I left, she said, your mother wrote poetry, you know. Never let anyone read it. I nodded. I know. I have the journals now. Well, she said, eyes softening slightly, maybe it's time someone did. Chapter 4. The words she never shared. 2 days later, I sat on the floor of my apartment, surrounded by boxes I hadn't opened in years. But none of them were mine. They were Mom's. Daniel, the lawyer, had delivered them to me with the keys to the storage unit she'd kept hidden from the rest of the family. She wanted you to have everything in it, he'd said. No one else even knew it existed. Inside those boxes were journals, more than 30 of them, each dated, each full. Neatly labeled by year, most of them from before she'd gotten sick. A lifetime of thoughts no one had ever heard. I opened one at random. 1998. The year Dad left. The year Mom stopped smiling with her eyes. The first page was a poem. They only come to me when I'm quiet. The parts of me I wasn't allowed to speak. So I bury my fire in lines and ink and smile like I'm still asleep. I read the words aloud, softly, as if speaking them too loudly would break something sacred. Her voice, trapped in time, was now echoing into mine. I sat there for hours, pages scattered around me like leaves, her words blowing across the floor of my living room. Some entries were simple. Grocery lists. Notes from church. Letters she never sent. Others were raw.painful.truthful.in one journal. She wrote, Kara wants to take care of me. Claire wants to understand me. They both love me, but in different languages. Kara believes love is control. Claire believes love is freedom, Maybe I'm only now learning how to speak both. I closed the journal and leaned my head against the wall. Tears slipped down my cheeks, not from sadness, but from recognition. My whole life I had searched for a way to understand her. And now here she was, offering it all. She hadn't been silent. She'd just been writing, and now it was my turn to do something with her voice. That weekend, I returned to the lake house, the one she had transferred into my name. A place I hadn't visited in years, not since I was in college. But stepping onto the porch, I felt it instantly. This house had been waiting for me. I brought the journals with me. A few at first, then all of them, and one night, I stayed up until dawn, organizing them by theme: her poetry, her grief, her motherhood, her dreams. It was all there, buried in these pages like a second life she had lived in secret. By sunrise, I knew what I had to do. I called Daniel. I want to publish her journals, I told him. Even if it's just privately. For women like her. For daughters like me. There was a pause on the line. Then he said she'd be proud of that. Very proud. A few weeks later, I held the first printed copy of The Fire Between the Lines in my hands. It was a softcover, modest, beautiful. The cover was her favorite shade of blue. No author photo. Just her name. Her words. I invited a small group to the lake house for a private reading. Friends. A few of Mom's old colleagues. One of her former nurses. And, to my surprise, Kara. She came late. She sat quietly in the back, and when I read the poem about love in different languages, I saw her lower her head. Afterward, she approached me slowly. She used to write while I was asleep, she said. I always thought it was journaling. I didn't know it was this. She didn't want anyone to know, I replied. Not until she could give it to someone who'd do something with it. Kara nodded. Her voice cracked when she said, "Thank you for not keeping it to yourself." I studied her face. The pride, the sadness, the apology she hadn't figured out how to say yet. And for the first time, I didn't feel the urge to fight her. Just to understand her, I think we both got a piece of her, I said. We just held them differently. Kara looked away for a moment, then back at me. I still think she should have told me. She did, I said, placing one of the printed books into her hands. Just not in the way you expected. She held it like something fragile, like truth. That night, after everyone left, I sat on the deck with the last journal in my lap. It was dated just 6 weeks before she passed. The final page was only half full. I won't be here when she opens this, but I hope she knows she always belonged. Chapter 5. I belonged all along. It had been 3 months since the funeral. Since Kara told me I didn't belong. Since the letter. Since the 3 months since Mom gave me a voice that was hers, and somehow also mine. The first run of The Fire Between the Lines sold modestly, but enough. Enough for it to end up in a few local bookstores. Enough for a women's center in Vermont to ask me to do a reading. Enough for someone, a daughter, a mother, a quiet woman sitting in a loud room, to whisper, "This saved me." And that was more than I ever expected. More than I ever thought she expected. But one moment stayed with me above all the rest. It came not from the readings or the books or the lawyer calls. It came from Kara. It was a Sunday afternoon, and she had asked if we could visit Mom's grave together. I hadn't returned since the day of the will. Maybe I was afraid. Maybe I was just full. But something about her asking made it feel right. We didn't speak much on the drive. She wore navy, her hair pulled back in that same strict ponytail she always wore when she needed to keep herself together. I brought white roses. She brought lilies. I smiled at that, gently. You still think she liked lilies? She gave a tiny laugh. I think she liked that they made me feel like I was doing something. We placed our flowers side by side on the grave. Her name etched in soft gray, her birth and death separated by the dash that had become the universe of our childhood. We stood there in silence until Kara finally said, "I was angry because I thought I lost something that was mine." I looked over at her, but reading her words, she continued, made me realize I never actually had the version of her that you did. And maybe I was mad that I never let myself try. She didn't make it easy, I said. No, Kara agreed. But we didn't make it easier either. She pulled something from her coat pocket, a folded page, typed. I wrote something, she said, awkward. It's not poetry. But I thought you could include it. In the next edition. I took it, unfolding the page. It was titled, "To the Sister Who Stayed Quiet So I Could Feel Loud." I didn't read it there. I didn't need to. We stood for another few minutes, then turned to leave. But before we walked back to the car, I stepped toward the headstone one last time. I rested my palm against the cold marble and whispered, "You were wrong about one thing, Mom. I didn't need this to feel like I belonged. I just needed to know you thought I did." That night, back at the lake house, I lit a candle and opened the last journal again, not to read. To write. For the first time in years, I wrote not out of survival or therapy, but because I had something to say. I started a new page. She gave me her fire in silence. They tried to put it out with doubt, with control, with exclusion, but here I am, reading, writing, belonging, not because of a will, because I have one. I smiled. Then I closed the journal, blew out the candle, and sat in the stillness. I end the piece she'd left behind. I end the life I was finally allowed to live, not as the forgotten daughter, not as the family disappointment, but as the woman she trusted most, to tell the truth when no one else would.